There's two discussions. The first discussion is, do you think the Jets should have hired Belichick? I'm of the mindset, probably not. I know that you might disagree, but I want to just create this thread here. The other thing, which I think can be universally agreed upon, is that Bill Belichick, along with Lombardi and Parcells, are three of the most fertile minds, if not the three most brilliant minds in the history of football. And to me, good organizations, this is what bothers me about the Jets. And really, I had to call in C-Mac. I went ballistic. For the Jets not to bring him in the building, even if you string him along, Sal, with no intention of hiring him to be your coach. You get him in the building, you sit him down, and you get his thoughts on Sauce, on Garrett Wilson for a big contract, on Rodgers, on the O-line. You just gather some intel from a brilliant, brilliant mind who's desperate to get back in the game. But what do the Jets do? The Jets are like, no, we're good. We're okay. So it just shows you that the forward-thinking, the good winning franchises, they would have done what I said. The Jets, on the other hand, they try to be spiteful and try to get him back for what happened probably 20-something years ago, slam the door in his face without benefiting themselves one bit. Idiotic.
You hate to hear this, but the Jets are just clueless and nothing's going to change until something actually changes.
No, I hear you. I hate to hear it, but I know it.
They're going to screw this up. The Jets should have been doing everything in their power going back years, whether it's Harbaugh or Belichick himself, everything in their power to get a guy like that to even consider them. The fact that he would go to them, and there's one reason why, and it plays into everything that I've been saying here about Rodgers and the Jets. You saw it yesterday why. This team is the worst coached team that maybe the sport has ever seen. They do have talent. Now, how talented on paper? Were certain guys disappointing? Sauce Gardner, we'll get to him. He's another clueless one. But whatever. Like, certain guys on the team maybe didn't live up to the expectations, but they had talent.
Yep.
They were a disaster from the word go because they had no direction, no coach. Saleh was a dead man walking. He was overmatched. They should have made a change last year. So if we said that and then it played out that way, obviously we're proven to be correct. So in my mind, and by the way, I said this last week after watching that show on Apple TV, The Dynasty or whatever, that Belichick is unhireable. Except for the Jets, because that franchise needs Bill Belichick and because of their circumstance with the quarterback in place, a proven quarterback in place, and with a roster that is not totally barren. This is not a rebuild. From a Giants perspective, to me, Belichick, unhireable. Other situations, unhireable. Jet situation, he's the greatest hire that they could have made. And he comes to them and they say no.
Well, again, I don't necessarily agree with you, but I certainly understand what you're saying enough to the point where I would have done more than they did. Hey, at least get to the point, Bill. How open are you to working with another general manager? Listen, we all know that Belichick, from his perspective, is looking at the Jets and he's trying to prey on their desperation. So get a ton of money and get the hammer, get personnel, everything that he wanted. I'm not saying that the Jets should have acquiesced on that. As a matter of fact, I would not have, because I don't think that Bill Belichick has distinguished himself as a personnel
Would you take in Lombardi, Bill and Lombardi, just like it is in Carolina?
Listen, I would have been open to it. I'm not saying I would have been open to it, but what I'm saying is, like, for the Jets to not even have the conversation is really laughable. And listen, there's no guarantee they're going to get Mike Vrabel. Oh, yeah, by the way, how the Denver Broncos looking? They're going to wind up winning 10 games or so. Right. Why? Because they brought in an established head coach who knows how to win. I want to be fair to the Jets.
Who, by the way, took his own quarterback after having Russell Wilson forced on him, got rid of him, he was able to identify him, and now is winning with a rookie quarterback.
That's a good point. I'm not trying to shove. I never was trying to shove Bill Belichick down the throats of the Jets. There's probably at this point, Sal, for me, there's probably more minuses than pluses. He's not young. He hasn't done a lot with Brady. He probably wants to have all the power. Those are things that probably myself, if I owned the Jets, would have dissuaded me from actually saying, all right, you're hired. But I'll tell you what I'm doing. I'm having a conversation. I'm looking at film. Oh, you don't think Sauce is worth $100 million? I'm going to at least use his mind to advance my pathetic franchise.
Why, though, would you? Because you liked him more so for the Giants. I wouldn't have touched him if I'm the Giants, but why would you like Bill for the Giants and not the Jets when this is a ready-made thing? Like, basically, the hire would have been, hey, Bill, you take over. You do what you want for the next 2-3 years with Rodgers in place, see where it is, and then from there go on. Like, what's another 2 years? You already have a team in place with a quarterback. You're bringing in the greatest head coach of all time on a mission to prove everything, whether it's the NFL and get the all-time record, whether it's to, in spite of people to show that he can still do it. Like, and it's only 2-3 years as opposed to another unknown, hire a first-time head coach, see if they can eventually draft a quarterback. Like, they're going to be a mess now. They're going to be a mess.
Well, I mean, not if they get somebody like Vrabel. And I still think, now, if it does work out well, it's almost, I mean, I hate to say this, but it's almost like if this works out for the Jets, it almost works out by accident.
Right.
Because their track record proves and has shown nothing to have any sort of confidence that they're going to go through the process properly and identify the right general manager or the right head coach. And even if they do, will that person want them because the Jets are a mess and Woody's got his fingerprints on stuff? I don't know. I never say never. Otherwise, what the hell are we doing here? Like, if there's no chance for the Jets to ever do anything without somebody like Belichick, then let's just, pack up shop and call it a day and root for somebody else, which I'm not going to do. But I do think, just to answer you directly about why am I okay or was I okay with the Giants more so than the Jets. Honestly, Sal, I think it's just the sentiment of the fact that I know that he reveres the Giants. I don't think it's more than that. Those worries would have followed him to the other side of MetLife as well. He's not young. He hasn't won without Brady, and he probably wants all the juice, and I don't think he deserves it at this point because he hasn't done enough outside of being a great coach in terms of structuring rosters and that final say. So those would have been, for me, impediments for the Giants as well. But I would have leaned on his reverence for the team rather than what has always been a disdain for the other team in that stadium.
Right, and for me, it's only because of the current situation that the Jets are in. See, the Jets are going to screw this thing up multiple times over. Going to get Rodgers was a question in the first place. Now, let's just say that we still said we would have done that, and I would have. But they put themselves in a spot where they really had no choice. Rodgers was their best choice. Then he gets hurt. Now they have a decision to make. They chose to run it back. To me, that's mistake number 2. Mistake number 1 is putting yourself in a position where you have to rely on a 40-year-old quarterback. Mistake number 2 is after Rodgers goes down for that year, you got to see Robert Saleh. You knew he wasn't a good head coach. Get the established coach now. Now, they didn't. Then this season is a complete disaster. And in my mind, mistake number 3 is going to be, instead of bringing it back with Rodgers and this roster and a real competent established head coach, they're going to go in a different direction. Probably a younger head coach because they're not going to have many great choices. Probably a different quarterback.
You really think they're going to hire somebody who's never coached a game in their life? I don't think they're doing that this time. I really don't.
Yeah, even if it is, it's not going to be.
Eberflus or somebody? That one stunned me.
And by the way, if you hire a head coach with experience, that's fine. But if you're going to do that, why not hire Bill Belichick, who's the best head coach with experience? None of this stuff is guaranteed. Look at Doug Peterson in Jacksonville. Love to hire. We wanted the Jets to maybe get him a Super Bowl head coach, whatever. The idea back then was the Jets to get the number 1 pick and maybe hire Doug Peterson. Obviously, that didn't work out. Point is, they need an experienced head coach. They have an experienced roster. They have a proven quarterback, even though he's still declining. You saw what he's capable of doing yesterday, and he's also motivated. I would have loved, at least for 1, maybe 2 years, the tandem of Belichick and Rodgers, and the Jets actually could have made that happen. The reason why we didn't make a big deal of it is because I never thought ever in a million years Belichick would ever consider Woody Johnson and the Jets.
Yeah.
He apparently does, and they turn their nose.
And to not even get to the point about at least having the conversation, which is really my entire point here, have the conversation, figure out what the man's thinking. Does he even want, Rodgers back? So they just missed it they missed a window to really, I think, add some information to their portfolio. And, listen, you can never having information is never going to set you up for a loss. Now, it doesn't guarantee success, but the more you know, the more potential you have to cash in and do something right. And they just said, nah, we're not interested. And you know why? Ego, lack of vision, lack of forward thinking. Too many things that have plagued the Jets since Woody, and really before Woody, but since Woody's been here.
BT and Sal on the Fan, our friends at Town Fair Tire, remind you that at Town Fair Tire, you always get the guaranteed lowest price on name brand tires from Connecticut to Maine. Nobody beats Town Fair Tire. Nobody. Chris is in Nanuet. What's up, Chris?
Hey, Chris.
Hey, what's up, boys? I got a quick little side note before I start. Sally boy, King Cohen came through. We got Soto, baby.
This guy.
Yeah, we were getting hit on the weekend with that.
That's all I heard at the Coliseum.
Baby,
King
it's everywhere.
Cohen this.
Guy dropped off pizza yesterday. Sal Soto.
Get out of here. Are you serious?
Oh, yeah, I'm in my freaking Mickey Mouse pajamas. So you got to tell you Soto. Anyway, get to the Jets, please. Chris.
All right, let me talk to BT now because I feel for BT.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, Belichick, if we took him back, it would have been a disgrace. It would have been like taking back an ex-girlfriend who leaves you, becomes this hot shot, and then she wants you back. No, Bill Belichick's last stand with the Jets would have been to screw us over one more time. There's plenty more experienced head coaches. I'm all in on
now, Chris, hold on 1 second, buddy. You might be able to have a conversation. You might be right. And by the way, I never once said, nor will I ever, that they should have offered him the job. All I'm saying is have the conversation. You just said there's a lot of other qualified, veteran, experienced people to take. Name them.
Mike Vrabel.
Okay, that's what I love. Who else?
Well, you can also get a coordinator. You can get a guy.
Stop! No, Chris, no, Chris, hold on, bud. I'm not saying coordinators never work. There's a lot of evidence that they do, but in this situation,
coach experience.
No, they need a man. They need a leader.
Agreed.
A grown up to run this ship.
They need Bill Belichick. I mean, he was the guy, Chris. So
Thanks for the call, buddy.
Dude. Vrabel might end up being okay.
I love Vrabel. I've never wavered from that once.
But how could you think that he's better to turn this dumpster fire around than Bill Belichick?
Because he's younger and there's more energy. And by the way, I don't know for a fact that he would. I think that it seems like the right time to hire somebody with I don't want to overstate his success. It's not like he won Super Bowls in Tennessee, but the man was very successful. And he won without a star quarterback, which is appealing to me. And he's got discipline. He's a bit of a throwback, tough guy, which I like. I don't know. I just think that there's a fine line between offering him the job and not even having a conversation. Can we get somewhere to the middle of the road?
Eddie is in Rockland. What's up, Eddie?
Hey, what's up, fellas? Yeah, I agree with BT. You got to at least bring him in and pick his brain and see what a 3-year plan would be or something like that. But my main thing is, BT, I got one for you.
Mm-hmm.
Next year, before Rodgers steps on the field, he says to you, because I heard him say it in the news, he wants to play 3 more years. He says, I want a 2-year extension or I'm not playing this year. Trade me. What do you do?
I tell him to get lost is what I do. Extension.
He's got no leverage now.
Extension.
Look, now that's the other thing I was going to ask you here. You want Rodgers with Vrabel?
If Vrabel wants Rodgers, yes. If Vrabel does not, then I'm prepared to let him make that decision.
And that's even more the point. Like, Rodgers wants to play, and I guarantee you Rodgers would have enjoyed, now, maybe enjoyed is a strong word, because I don't know if anybody enjoys Bill Belichick, but I think Rodgers on his final season or two, on his last legs, playing for Belichick, who believes in him clearly. We've talked about this. Belichick said it. You know how I felt about Rodgers. I wanted the Jets to run it back with him, and that's in the minority.
Talking about this season. So did I.
No. Next year. I'm talking about going into next year.
Yeah, you were saying that.
4 weeks ago, I was saying that. Now, all of a sudden, it's becoming more mainstream. I said it 3-4 weeks ago, and I was how can you bring Rodgers back? But Belichick, a couple of weeks ago, said something positive about Rodgers. This is before it came out that he was interested in the Jets.
Correct.
Which, to me, would indicate that that's the reason why Belichick would even call the Jets. It's not because he's clamoring for a head coaching job in the NFL and is begging everybody. Certainly not because he likes Woody. It's because he identified the Jets as a team with potential to win now, large in part because of their quarterback.
Well, I think that Bill wasn't using the Jets as leverage is naive, because your Falcons didn't want him a year ago.
Right.
And
but how so leverage? Like, for what?
Well,
I heard that before, and I'm confused with that.
Okay, but just before I even tell you why the leverage, like, who else do you think was going to call Bill? For me, the answer is nobody.
Well, I would assume nobody.
Okay, so does he really?
I mean, we had a list of maybe teams that might fit, but who the hell knows?
No, for sure. And I'm not pretending to know either. I'm just kind of reading the room, and based on the lack of action a year ago, and the perceived lack of action now, he's been connected to nothing. And before you take the Carolina job, you do your due diligence, like reaching out to the Jets and the other openings that might be open or are open. So I believe that nobody wanted Belichick. And I do think that if you had a coach without penalties and you buttoned a few things up, that this Jets team with just a small tweak or two could be a wild card team next year. I believe that with Aaron Rodgers. But I don't think that Belichick looks at the Jets and says, man, this is so appealing based on the roster. I think it's a combination of, all right, they're not terrible and nobody else wants me.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, again, I don't know who wants him, who didn't. I'm going to assume that.
I don't think anybody wants him.
And again, I said he's unhireable from an NFL perspective based on certain things that I saw in that documentary and the way things went maybe at the end, or just the toxic environment that he created during even the apex of the Patriots dynasty. But with the Jets, it's different. This is the one team that to me was a no doubt about it home run hire, perfect fit. Also closed the chapter a -1 as he resigns as HC, the NYJ. Like, put that to bed. Woody's showing, you know what? I'm going to do what you want. You want to establish head coach? There is none greater. He's the greatest head coach that ever lived.
Yep.
Now he's the guy with Aaron Rodgers. Go turn this thing into a playoff team in a year or two. And by the way, if it doesn't work, you fire him and you start over anyway. Like, what's the harm? Now you're going to have to blow it up, bring in a coach that maybe not as good as Belichick, or doesn't have the resume of Belichick, maybe halfway it. Who knows with Rodgers? Like, to me, it would have been, hey, we believe in his plan with this roster. Let's have the guy that we really believe in, Belichick, turn this thing over.
What do you think got in the way of the Jets having this conversation with Belichick?
I honestly don't even know how legit. Like, it says somebody from Belichick's camp.
Well, no, then it was furthered, and it said Belichick himself reached out. The initial report was, I think it was Diana Rossini.
That said.
And then Connor had that somebody in Belichick's camp reached out, and then I believe it was Costello shortly thereafter said, no, it was actually Belichick himself. So, and by the way, for me, I'm going to answer my own question. Why do I think it didn't take another step forward? Woody's ego. And that's the problem.
Yeah, bingo. So you just
That's the problem.
And that's why I could never believe in them regardless of who they hire here. The good guys aren't going to come here, and you actually had the greatest guy wanting to come here. If Bill Belichick could check his ego because he knows how he can't stand Woody Johnson ripping the Jets left and right, he checked his. That's not something Belichick wants to do. You think Bill Belichick of all the teams would want to come to the Jets?
Groveling back to the Jets?
Yeah. Basically.
I mean, if nobody else is even calling you, I mean, you got to swallow your ego. I'm sure that's not his first choice, but then I even have the conversation's criminal. It's absolutely laughable that this didn't even get to a meeting. It really is. It's embarrassing.
It shows you that it's just not going to change for the Jets. I don't know how it can get much worse, but if it can, it will. PT and Sal on the bench.
Jeez, thanks.
More your cloud. I mean,
it will.
I don't want to see that.
I know you don't. Rodgers looked pretty good yesterday. We got to have that conversation. Honestly, he looked pretty good.
Yeah, but of course, the Jets getting a win and hurting their draft stock. Yeah. I want to get to that as well. 888, and we'll get to the Giants later on as well. 888-808-1019. PT and Sal on the Fan.